1963 was when the Brady Rule was adopted. It was made stronger in follow-on cases. 1963 and today, very little is done to observe that rule on the part of prosecutors or to enforce it because there are no sanctions. So what happens is that the prosecutor, if he's caught violating the Brady Rule, if he's hiding evidence, if he's making up evidence, if he's engaged in gross misconduct in the trial, the rule is that that's the judge's deal to take care of. The problem is that 80 or 90% of the judges are former prosecutors who did the same damn thing when they were prosecutors. So the estimate is that of the people, of prosecutors who've been caught abusing this, less than 2% of them have ever been brought up on charges, and the most they've received is a slap on the wrist. As happened in the Stevens case, after the judge demanded an investigation, after the judge caught them concealing evidence and making things up, they were suspended for 15 days, later put back in. That was rescinded, and the government was told to pay their salaries. The fact is that prosecutors not only exceed their responsibilities and what they're supposed to do, but, and just as importantly, they can do it because they know there is no sanction in the real world for their doing it.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think it's an important discussion to have here because prosecutors as a class are no better or no worse than bakers or teachers. There's good ones and there's bad ones. And if we were having a discussion about EPA officials gone wild or IRS agents gone mad, everyone would intuitively understand that in this room because we know power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so our founders had an answer to this, and that is a system of checks and balances. And right now we don't have that. We have prosecutors with unreviewable charging authority. Thanks to mandatory minimums, they have the ability to pick your sentence. And instead of politicians hauling them up to Congress or before state legislators to ask what they're doing, how they're abusing their authority, why are they doing these things, we have politicians empowering them by giving them vague statutes, very broad criminal laws, so that if you are the old expression, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If you are a prosecutor, everything looks like a crime. And we have now given you the laws and the tools to go find them. And so what we need now is to restore some checks and balances to this system.
And let me say there's a real political price that we've paid for these bogus prosecutions. By charging Ted Stevens and convicting him, although briefly it was thrown out, but while he was convicted, he was defeated running for re-election. The man that defeated him, Begich, provided the deciding vote for Obamacare. That was the vote that tipped the scale.
Yep.
So all of us that are frustrated, it's so hard to unring the bell of Obamacare. It was those prosecutors that made that possible, that gave Harry Reid the strong hand that allowed him to pass it by exactly the votes necessary.
You know, Kevin's got it exactly right. It's the system of incentives and the way it works that creates the havoc. Years ago, I testified before Congress when there was a bill to allow DNA testing in capital cases after the conviction was secured. And I said in my testimony, I said, if I were a prosecutor and I had gotten you sentenced to death, and for $69.95 they could find out whether I was right or not, I'd want to know if I was helping kill an innocent person.
Exactly.
And a prosecutor said to me afterwards, you got that all wrong. He said, because a capital case is a huge, huge thing for a prosecutor, and the last thing he or she needs is for somebody to say a couple of years later, oh, you were wrong. They would rather the innocent person be executed than to have that in the personnel file. All of these things are part of a system that needs to be reformed so that the incentivization is changed so that, as former Attorney General Cuccinelli put it, justice can be put back into the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm. Sydney?
I find those remarks absolutely outrageous. Any good prosecutor, and there are some good ones, wants to seek justice, not conviction. On April 1, 1940, then Attorney General Robert H. Jackson gave a beautiful, inspired speech called The Federal Prosecutor. If you Google Jackson and the Federal Prosecutor, you can read it in its entirety. But he and then the Supreme Court have said that the job of the United States Attorney is to seek justice, not convictions. And sometimes that even means that a guilty person goes free. But when you wrongfully convict somebody, you've committed multiple crimes, because not only have you taken the life and liberty of somebody who did nothing wrong, the person who did commit the actual crime is out there still doing it. You can look at the case in Texas of Michael Morton for that. He was sentenced to prison for 25 years, allegedly for murdering his wife. DNA evidence exonerated him 25 years late, while the person who actually committed the crime was out there and did it again. Michael Morton lost his son, his 25 years of his life, the best years of his life, and the prosecutor who had hidden the bloody bandana and DNA evidence and other evidence became a state court judge in Texas. All he got for Michael Morton's 25 years of wrongful imprisonment was 5 days in the county jail.
That's exactly. I don't usually do this, but I'd like to read a paragraph from Justice Sutherland in 1935 about the role of a prosecutor in our system. And this paragraph was included in the manual for U.S. attorneys at the instructions of Ed Meese when he was Attorney General of the United States.
I bet it's from Berger versus United States.
That's correct.
I literally used to keep it taped over my telephone.
And it is not in there anymore. And had those prosecutors who went after Senator Stevens had this in their minds, they wouldn't have done it. But
Right.
let me read that paragraph, because it's so important historically, and it was so important to Ed Meese that he made sure every U.S. prosecutor had it above their desk, as you did. And I'm quoting, "The United States Attorney is the representative not of an ordinary party to a controversy, but of a sovereignty whose obligation to govern impartially is as compelling as its obligation to govern at all, and whose interest, therefore, in a criminal prosecution is not that it shall win a case, but that justice shall be done. As such, he is in a peculiar and a very definite sense the servant of the law, the twofold aim of which is that guilt shall not escape or innocence suffer. He may prosecute with earnestness and vigor. Indeed, he should do so. But while he may strike hard blows, he is not at liberty to strike foul ones. It is as much his duty to refrain from improper methods calculated to produce a wrongful conviction as it is to use every legitimate means to bring about a just one." That was important enough that Attorney General Meese made every prosecutor read it. They don't have to do that anymore. And I suspect that even when they did read it, some of them didn't take it to heart.
And Ed Meese is an example of the generational divide in prosecutors. I've known Ed since back in the first Reagan campaign in '66. And Ed had been a line prosecutor in Santa Clara County. And he said that one of the great joys he had as a prosecutor was completing an investigation and finding out someone was innocent and telling him, "You've got a clean bill of health. We're not doing anything." The new generation of prosecutors says, "I've invested so much time in the case, we'd better dig deeper and find something." And that's a terrible echo of what Beria, the head of the Soviet secret police, said to Stalin. "You bring me the man, I'll find the crime." You target somebody and then you search to find something to charge them with. This is appalling. And also in the days of situation ethics, where there is no good or evil, there is no justice or honesty, these folks have a complete running room. Their consciences are not formed because there are no permanent values to align them. One of the key points that Alex Kaczynski makes is we have to be involved. We have to hold the judge's feet to the fire because, as they said, it's the judge in the courtroom that has to deal with this. And they have to feel the public is demanding this. So if you take the time, if you could go to our Twitter feed or to our Facebook page and like us, we'll keep you informed. ACU has developed a grassroots network of working for justice reform, and we get experts like this to work with us on how we can be most effective at protecting the average citizen. And it's wonderful of these folks to come and give their time to help educate us about this. Sidney, you also were involved in the Enron case. Any lessons from that you came across?
Definitely, and I want to back up a little bit too and tell everyone that the prosecutor who micromanaged the prosecution of United States Senator Ted Stevens, that literally changed the balance of power in the United States Senate and enabled the enactment of Obamacare, was one of the prosecutors in the Merrill Lynch case in the book, who had yellow highlighted and hidden the evidence that showed the Merrill Lynch executives were innocent. He got promoted during the Bush administration to acting Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice. And the other lawyers that I talk about in the book were promoted by President Obama, even though they were appointed originally as Bush Enron Task Force prosecutors. They were promoted by President Obama to his longest-serving White House counsel, General Counsel, Deputy Director of the FBI, the Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice, who recently left, was responsible for destroying Arthur Andersen and 85,000 jobs, all for nothing, only to be reversed by the United States Supreme Court 9-0, because Andersen had not committed an offense. Most people didn't even hear about the reversal, but they heard about Andersen destroying evidence and shredding documents and being destroyed as a company, and they probably didn't even hear that 85,000 jobs were lost because of that prosecution. It was for absolutely nothing. And the Enron cases too, the whole Enron task force, every case they actually tried that they took to trial was reversed in some part, in whole or in part, for some form of prosecutorial overreaching.
Kevin?
Well, I just want to say, we started with a video that talked about political opponents and people who were disfavored and they were targeted for that reason. In this case, you see prosecutors going after corporate folks who may be unpopular at times. The problem is you may be unpopular at some point, and David knows this better than anyone else, but prosecutors have particularly gone after gun owners in a lot of cases. And in those cases, you're not always protected by a vigilant judge in the courtroom because there may be a mandatory minimum applies that takes away the judge's discretion to bring justice. There's a case in Florida that we've been following. A 22-year-old guy came out of a bar, was being harassed by a bunch of people as he tried to leave. He was with his girlfriend. He was a lawful gun owner. He felt threatened for his life. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he wanted to remove himself from the situation. He took his gun out. He fired it straight into the air, not aimed at anyone. No one was hurt. Nothing happened. It was reported by some onlookers. He was charged with aggravated assault because he scared the people who were there. Under Florida law, because he discharged a firearm during the commission of his aggravated assault, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Now, the prosecutor who brought those charges held all the cards. Because it was a mandatory minimum, the judge who heard that and could have otherwise understood the context and might have said, we don't want you shooting your gun, you could have hurt somebody, we're going to sanction you some way, had no discretion, and he got 20 years. I'm happy to say that FAM and the National Rifle Association actually changed the law in Florida, but it wasn't retroactive. So that guy got 20 years, he served 10 years, he's got 10 more to go. And we've got to be able to fix these things.
Well, Dave Clark made the correct point, and that is this could affect you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. The reason that prosecutors can do this goes back to something that Pat said earlier in Stalinist Russia, bring me the person, I'll find the crime. We have so many crimes and so many regulatory crimes that involve prison sentences today that a prosecutor or the government can, in fact, pick you out and find something that you did that would subject you to prison time. That's just a fact. That's what Robert Jackson, when he was made Attorney General, warned the Justice Department about when there were far fewer crimes than there are today. So not only do you have this proliferation of crimes, many of these crimes do not require what's known as mens rea, which means that you don't have to have any intent to do anything wrong. you might not even know of the existence of the crime when the prosecutor goes after you. And that's particularly true in some of these strict liability corporate cases.
And the regulatory.
In the regulatory world. And so and one thing that I want to point out is there's a lot of talk about criminal justice reforms. To some people, that means releasing gangbangers onto the street.
No.
that people shouldn't be in prison. Period. There are people who belong in prison. There are reforms that are necessary, and there are reforms that are not. In the current wave of reforms, Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah said he wanted to apply mens rea to new laws. The Democratic leadership said absolutely not, because a lot of these people that they want to go after are people that they can go after as long as there's no guilty mind required, as long as they can apply these 4,500 federal laws to target somebody and go after. So you need to look carefully and ask what the motives are when somebody says what we need to do is reform the criminal justice system. The criminal justice system is as bad as everybody says it is, but the reforms that are necessary are not always reforms that will accomplish the goals that we as conservatives would like to accomplish.
And this is really a great point about mens rea or criminal intent. For millennia, it's been the basis of the law that you have to have intended to do something wrong. That was changed as we moved into the regulatory state. There are not only 4,000 statutes, federal statutes, there are tens of thousands of regulations, many of which have no mens rea requirement. The left-wing senators were so devoted to keep empowering the regulatory state that they dropped and killed the reforms of the rest of criminal law that there was agreement on, because they wanted the ability of the bureaucracy to have strict liability for businesses here in the U.S. That is how dedicated they are to it. And it is a battle royale over this. It's not a well-known issue, mens rea, but pay attention. It makes all the difference in the world. If you mislabel an orchid being shipped, that can be a violation. Think of the SWAT team raid on Gibson guitar. They were using wood approved from India for the fretboards. Well, apparently one state in India requires that the wood be worked on by Indian employees. Well, how's an American company supposed to know that? But the Department of Interior raided Gibson guitar. You know, who knew they had a SWAT team at Interior? And the justification for no-knock raids is that people are going to destroy evidence. Well, I defy you to flush a fretboard down a toilet to get rid of it. There was no need for those armed raids, but they did. They harassed the owner on something that clearly, why is the Department of Interior defending Indian jobs over Americans working on the fretboards? This is insanity, but that's what's going on these days, and we need to put an end to it. We hope you'll join us in the effort to bring common sense back and say, yes, we do need prisons. Rape, robbery, arson, homicide, absolutely. But we don't need it for a lot of these other crimes. Prisons are for folks we're afraid of, not folks we're mad at.
And there are far too many crimes now, as you all have mentioned. When you think about the incredible number of statutes that we have, and then I think it's millions of federal regulations, and progressive prosecutors have been increasingly creative in their ability to take civil regulations that were never intended to have criminal consequences and pull them into criminal law through a conspiracy statute or an aiding and abetting statute, that they then imprison people for things that were only supposed to be civil violations and handled that way. It's gotten completely out of hand. But when you do think about the number of laws, remember this, God did it with just 10.
Yeah. Now, we're involved in all the states and at the federal level. If you're interested, come by our booth. We have some literature there that explains what we're doing. You can sign up. Sydney will have her books down there. I really encourage you. It was an eye-opener to me when I bought it. And we also have a session at 4:45 this afternoon to talk about our progress in the states, where in Texas we've succeeded in reserving prison beds for those who are afraid of, treated in the community with mental health and drug addiction treatment, job training, saving the cost of incarceration. It's cut $3 billion from their budget, and the crime rate is the lowest it's been since '68. So we can have common sense spending and common sense policies and fewer people in prison.
Pat,
So
can
David.
I say something? Yes, that's an important session this afternoon. We as conservatives in this area have a great deal to be proud of, because most of the traction on real prison and criminal justice reform has not been at the federal level during the Obama years. It's been at the state level. The heroes of criminal justice reform are people like Mary Fallon in Oklahoma, Rick Perry when he was governor of Texas, Nathan Deal in Georgia, Matt Bevin in Kentucky. Republican governors who have looked at the system and looked at it with the dual vision of what is the purpose it's supposed to serve and how do we make it serve that purpose and not be subject to the kinds of abuses that none of us as conservatives think government should be involved in. So there are real heroes out there. We as conservatives deserve some credit for what we've been able to do, and there's much more that we can do in a positive sense to improve a system that desperately needs improvement.
Yep. And we hope you'll join us. So thank you so very much. And if you've liked this panel, write to Matt Schlapp and say, hey, I love having criminal justice reform on the program. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for being here.
March along, sing a song with the army of the free. Count the brave, count the true, who have fought to victory. We're the army and proud of our name. We're the army and proudly proclaim. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might. And the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won. And the army goes rolling along. And it's high, high, hey, the army's on its way. Count off the cages loud and strong. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's high, high, hey, the army's on its way.
How's it going, folks? Welcome, Nigel Farage. The information is on the screen. In case you're wondering when he starts, when he speaks, information is on the screen. He should be coming up shortly. Thank you very much for choosing Golden State Times as your stream of choice. Give this live stream a thumbs up. Also, make sure to share it on social media. Send it to people on email, the Facebook, gab.ai, Twitter, whatever it is that you have. Send it to people. Let your friends know that Nigel is about to come up, and I'm sure he's going to have an awesome speech lined up for you guys. Thank you very much again for choosing Golden State Times as your stream of choice. Stay tuned.
Trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. We have loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. We
coming to CPAC now for 8 years, and I've wanted to stand here and wax lyrical for a very long time, but you have a better speaker, so I will keep this brief. My name is Raheem Kassam. I'm the editor-in-chief of Breitbart's London Bureau. And I was born in West London into a Muslim family. And I am now proud to say that I am a conservative. I am a proud Englishman. And I am a robust Americophile. But sometimes when people meet me, they ask me, "Oh, Raheem, that's a Muslim name. Do you make the Hajj? Do you do the pilgrimage?" And I say, "Yeah, I make the pilgrimage every year to the Gaylord National Convention Center." To be amongst people like you, the people who have made such a massive difference. You have changed the world, ladies and gentlemen. But there is a lot of the world that still needs changing. You know, I was in Sweden last week. Sweden! You heard of Sweden, right? You heard a lot about Sweden in the past few days. Absolutely extraordinary. I want to talk to the back of the room for a second, the media at the back of the room for a second. You can do better than that, come on. Yeah. Look, I was in Malmo, I was in Husby, I was in Rosengård, I was in Stockholm, I was in these no-go zones. And actually, if you want a little bit more about that, if you go down to the Regnery stand downstairs, I've got a book coming out on it. And I was there in these no-go zones, and I came back, and we were talking about Sweden, and Donald Trump's talking about Sweden. And I was in Paris too, and I was in Brussels and Molenbeek too. And you guys at the back, you just don't get it. You don't go there. You don't see what's going on. Get your heads out of your rears. I'm sorry, they're not all like that. But I'm here to introduce a man today who really changed my life in a very significant way, who changed my country in a very significant way, and I would argue changed the world in a very significant way. You know, last year we had Brexit. That's too big. I'm too big up there. I don't like that. Last year we had Brexit, and Brexit was spearheaded by a man who loves his country, who wants an end to uncontrolled mass migration, who wants our secure borders, and who wants us to be a proud sovereign nation again. I used to work for that man. He is a member of the European Parliament. He worked tirelessly, traveled up and down the country, sometimes speaking to rooms of 3 or 4 people at the beginning of his career, just to have his message heard. 20 years ago, this movement started. He's been a mentor to me. He's been a friend to so many of us. And he's also been really a father figure to so many of us. He has survived cancer. He has survived a car crash. He has survived a plane crash. He has survived the BBC, CNN, the establishment, the European Parliament. And he's also a very demanding man. He's a man who, when I worked for him, would be, just like Donald Trump, just like President Trump, would call at the most inopportune time. Hold on a minute. Yes, Nigel, I'm nearly done. I'm nearly done. Thank you. Yes, yes. Sorry, Mr. Brexit. Mr. Brexit. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brexit, Nigel Farage, my good friend. Please welcome him to the stage.
2016, we did it! We did it! Thank you. And I'm very honoured to be here today. I'm delighted and thrilled that CPAC invited me. Me, a foreigner, in your country. But you know, it's a funny thing. Since November the 8th, since the election of Donald J. Trump, every time I come to America, I'm feeling a little bit more American, I have to tell you. When, in years to come, the generations that follow us study the history of this period, there is one year that will stand out. There is one year that every school child will know, and that year is the year of 2016. Because in 2016 we witnessed the beginning of a global political revolution, and it's one that is not going to stop. It's one that is going to roll out across the rest of the free world. I had been fighting against Britain's membership of the European Union for 25 years. 25 years. And if you've endured abuse, if you've been called deplorable, you've only had a few months of being abused. I've had 20 years of it. But you know what? None of it mattered. I always believed that we should govern our own country. I always believed we should be free to reach out and make our own deals with our real friends in the world. And it's funny, our real friends in the world speak English, have common law, and stand by us in times of crisis. So I battled away for all those years. I thought I might become the patron saint of lost causes. And then the referendum came along, and we were told by vast sections of the media that we couldn't do it. We were told by many of the pollsters we couldn't do it. We were told by many of the commentators. Any of this ring familiar with you guys? We were told by the commentators that we couldn't do it, and they lined up all the big businesses, all the big banks, all the big politics, not just from Britain, but from across the world. Do you know we even had a visit from the 44th President of the United States of America? I will, to my dying day, be grateful that President Obama came to my country, intervened in the referendum, and told the United Kingdom's people, told America's greatest friend and ally in the world, and told us that if we voted to get our independence, we would go to the back of the line. And the British people were so disgusted by Obama treating us like this that it put us up 2% in the polls. So I shall always be grateful to Obama. So the great day came, 23rd of June, 2016, and by 3 o'clock in the morning, it was clear that after a period of just after 4 decades in which our politically corrupt rulers had given away our independence, our democracy, our sovereignty, the ability to make our own laws, the ability to choose our own friends, the ability to make the right trade deals with the right countries. Oh, and they'd also given away control of our borders. And by 3 o'clock in the morning of June the 24th, it was clear the nightmare had come to an end. We had voted to get our country back. And I can't tell you how thrilled and pleased that I'd felt. It seemed incredible that people had the courage to stand up against the entire establishment, but the brave British people did it. Oh, and by the way, the last opinion poll says that now 68% of the British people want us to get on with Brexit. And then a funny thing happened. I went to the Republican convention in Cleveland, and I realized that amongst the Republican activists and amongst a large chunk of the American people, there was something approaching Brexit mania. And I got the opportunity, through my friends in Mississippi, through the governor of Mississippi, I got my opportunity. Would I stand on a platform with Donald J. Trump, and would I tell that audience that what we'd done in Brexit was what you too could do here in America? And I told that audience, don't listen to the pollsters. Don't listen to the media. Don't listen to the commentators. They're trying to break your will. They're trying to make you stay at home. Don't listen to any of them. And I said, we got our country back on June 23rd, and you can get yours back too on November the 8th. And you know what? I am pleased and proud that I did that in Mississippi and that I came to America many times in that campaign to give Donald Trump support. I'm proud to have been part of that campaign. I really am. And what I'm seeing 36 days in to the Trump presidency, I'm seeing something quite remarkable. I'm seeing an elected leader who is trying to put in place the platform on which he was elected. How about that? Because we've had years, haven't we, of people making promises, getting into power, and not even attempting to put into place the things upon which they've been elected. And I believe that Trump, who is determined, and we saw him this morning, didn't we? And wasn't he just superb? No, what Trump is doing by trying to put in place that ticket on which he was elected, he is restoring faith in the democratic process, and good for him. Good for him. 2016 was the year that the nation-state democracy made a comeback against the globalists and those who would wish to destroy everything that we have ever been. But of course, Trump, amazing personality that he is, could not have done it on his own. He had some good people behind him. He had people like Steve Bannon, Kellyanne Conway, and many others. But he also had every single one of you, and this event is your celebration. Well done to all of you. Now, great though the night of June 23rd was, great though the night of November the 8th was, my favourite part of 2016 wasn't so much the victories, no. My favourite part of that evening of November the 8th was watching the faces of the CNN presenters. And you know what? They haven't given up, have they? They are in deep denial. They would like to wind the clock back to 2015 to pretend that none of this had ever happened. But just as Brexit becomes more popular by the day, President Trump will become more popular in America by the day. No, they won't give up. And some of their biggest cheerleaders, I'm thinking of Tony Blair in particular. Oh, wow. So he's popular here too, is he? Fine, good. I think of people like Tony Blair, who says that 2016 was just a blip. 2016 was an aberration. 2016 was just an outpouring of anger from very poorly educated, stupid, virtually unwashed people. That's what Blair thinks. But Tony Blair is wrong. He's wrong because what happened in 2016 is not the end of this great global revolution. What happened in 2016 is the beginning of a great global revolution. And this will roll out across the rest of the West. We've got some very exciting elections coming up in the Netherlands, in France, in Germany, possibly even in Italy. And believe me, I don't yet know whether the results in 2017 will be as dramatic as the results in 2016. But what I do know is that even if the challengers don't get over the line in this year, what they will do is shift the center of gravity of the entire debate. Because what is happening across Europe is people are rejecting this form of supranational government. They're rejecting the idea of being governed by a bunch of unelected old men in Brussels. Although I'm very grateful to these unelected old men because I've had some real sport with them in the European Parliament over the last couple of years. And they're rejecting the absolute madness and idiocy of what Angela Merkel did 18 months ago when she opened up her doors. And we've got to be clear, we're not against anybody based on religion or ethnicity. We're not against anybody, but we're for ourselves. We're for our country. We're for our communities. We're for making our people safe and with less risk from global terror. That is what we're for. That is what we're for. And we're for our country. And we're for our people. And we are winning. Thank you. Thank you. We're winning.
All right, folks, that was Nigel Farage, the architect of Brexit, the patriot. And I hope that you guys enjoyed his speech. It was awesome. I thought it was very good. And thank you very much for joining us and choosing us as your stream of choice. Give this stream a thumbs up. If you would like to help out the channel, there's links in the description below. I hope that you guys join us. We're going to be uploading later on today President Donald Trump's weekly address. So don't miss it. President Donald Trump's weekly address coming soon. So make sure that you check it out. You don't miss it. And like I said, thank you very much for choosing us as a stream of choice. If you are new to our channel, make sure to click that subscribe button and the notification bell right next to it so you can get a heads up on when we upload or we do any more live streams. So yeah, guys, we'll be shutting down for now, but we will be back soon later on today. We'll also be uploading news videos, so stay here with us. Thank you very much, and peace. Thank you very much to Deacon for coming out, Wyatt for coming out, Siri Blue 90. Those are our moderators. They try to keep the chat enjoyable and clean for everyone. and we thank them very much. Again, folks, if you guys would like to help out the channel, click the links in the description below and also give this a thumbs up. Thank you. See you soon. We will be having a news podcast later on today, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Again, we are having a news podcast here today, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, with myself and my good friend and everybody you guys know, Gorf. We will be having a news podcast later on today, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Thank you very much.